Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles. In this episode we're doing a top 10. Topic of the top 10? Top 10 wrestlers in Lucha Underground. Now, I've been told, and I know this from a wrestler from Lucha Underground, Ricky Reyes, was on a podcast that I helped produce called Live from the Armory, and he told us on the podcast Lucha Underground wasn't a promotion, it was a TV show. I kind of think it's somewhere in that gray area, so we're going to review it as if it was a promotion. It was short ran, 4 seasons of the show, and this is my opinion of the top 10 wrestlers to come out of Lucha Underground, or beyond Lucha Underground, either way. Some of them you knew before that. Number 10, Vampiro. Vamp was the commentator for all 4 seasons and highly involved in storylines in season 1 and 2, a little bit more on 3 and 4, but mostly 1 and 2. He was a guy that kind of led that credibility with the Lucha crowd. He is a legend in Lucha Libre. Also, he was a guy that fans of WCW were going to remember from his time in WCW as well, hence leading newer fans to come to the show to watch this, to bring, let's say, the AAA fans start watching Lucha Underground, bring some of the WCW fans in to watch Lucha Underground. There's a very heavy AAA influence, and it was kind of helped by AAA with their wrestlers, with promotion, almost like a AAA America kind of thing. And Vampiro, you could say a lot of things about him. He's insane, he's crazy. There's a lot of back and forth with him and some other wrestlers. He doesn't get along with a lot of people, but he's definitely a star. And that's why he's made the list at number 10. Coming from that, number 9. We're going to cheat a little bit. I'm throwing 3 people together because they did compete as a 6-man tag team or a 6-person tag team and won the Trios Championship. Son of Havoc, Angelico, and Ivelisse. All 3 of these deserve to be on this list individually, but in order to put more people on here, we cheated and put them together. I thought they all 3 of them brought something special. Son of Havoc was your consummate wrestler. Angelico was an insane high flyer. Ivelisse, one of the better women's wrestlers they had on the show. And all together, their dichotomy together made them special. I thought it was really cool having them 3 with such different personalities, such different styles. It meshed well, and the story with them all made it even better. That's why they made this list. Now our number 8, Brian Cage, aka The Machine. Brian Cage is a guy who, at the time of this recording, is employed by AEW, but hasn't been used in a prominent role in over a year. And I don't know why, because he's shown flashes both here, both in Impact, and even when he was on some of the early AEW stuff, he's shown that he could be a star. He's got a great look. He's got a great charisma to him. I know there was some stuff backstage with his wife that said about AEW, which I'm sure is the reason why. But the guy absolutely could go. For a guy as muscular and as large as him, being able to wrestle the way he does, it really made him special. It really makes him unique. And I think that he's a guy that should be pushed more and definitely deserves to be on this list as well. Coming from him, our number 7. Another guy that probably should have been pushed better in the WWE, that's Johnny Mundo, aka John Morrison, aka Johnny whatever promotion he's working in at the time. He was another guy, much like I said with Vampiro, that led some credibility to the group, that led some credibility to the show. If you tuned in to Lucha Underground and you were on the fence of where you should watch it or not, and then you see Johnny Mundo, you go, okay, that's John Morrison. I like him, or I liked him in WWE or Impact or wherever you may have seen him prior to this. And he brought in those fans that way. Because he was such a good wrestler, he kept you interested in what they were showing, and he was one of the bigger star names or star power names that they had brought into the company. Definitely a staple of the company, definitely a guy that used this and made Lucha Underground a springboard to get his own name out there even further than what it already was. Hence why Johnny Mundo is on our list. Now number 6, Phoenix, aka Rey Fenix. Phoenix was one of those guys that if you didn't watch Lucha Libre before this was going to be your first experience seeing him. And he's absolutely one of the best high flyers of this generation. One of the best Lucha Libre stars of this generation. The stuff that Phoenix can do in and out of the ring on the ropes is bar none with anybody. I could compare him to anybody in wrestling. There is no one in the world of wrestling better at the style that Phoenix does than Phoenix is himself. And he was absolutely amazing here, and he blew people's minds. And I remember watching this and with seeing friends that for the first time they would see Phoenix on Lucha Underground, they would rave about him and talk about how great he was. And it was for that reason, that's why Lucha Underground was so great, because you had, this is pre-AEW, WWE's never been able to properly showcase luchadors minus a few people, and now you get to see in America why Lucha Libre is so cool and so fun to watch. And it went a long way to build their company and to build these stars like Phoenix, because you're seeing the best of AAA coming in and showing out and being amazing on their company. I thought he was absolutely amazing. Absolutely love Phoenix. I thought he was awesome there. Definitely a breakout part for him. I 100% believe it's what led to him being employed with AEW. Just an amazing show. Our number 5. Another guy much on the same trajectory as Phoenix, Drago. Drago is well known in AAA. Another guy who was fantastic in the ring, had a fantastic charisma. The character that they gave him in Lucha Underground and the character that he portrays, it fit like a glove. He fit that role so perfectly, and he made such a great impression here. I loved everything he'd done there, and I'm probably gonna say this over and over again at this point. Just another reason why, when you tuned into this was so different than what you were seeing at the time on Impact or Ring of Honor or WWE. This was such a different show with the lucha influence in it, and it did lean heavily on its lucha influence. However, it was a hybrid between lucha and American style wrestling, so you could see there were guys that excelled in the American side of it, but came from the lucha world. And Drago was one of those guys. Definitely an amazing wrestler. Fantastic addition to the show. That's why he's on my list. Now, our number 4, Mil Muertes. Mil Muertes was kind of the Bray Wyatt / Undertaker character of their company. He was a dark, foreboding character. I mean, in his previous roles as Ricky Banderas and Judas Messias, he had taken that role as well, and he kind of brought it on here. His name is literally 1,000 Murders or 1,000,000 Murders, and it was just amazing. Just the stories that they built around him. Yeah, it was off the wall and crazy, but you believed in it because, much like The Undertaker, you could believe in the wrestler and the guy that's carrying that character. Therefore, you were willing to suspend that, yeah, this is insane and this is stupid and silly, but you watched it and you enjoyed it because you liked the person doing the role. Now, coming from that, our number 3, one of the people that I think's career most improved by being on Lucha Underground, and that is Monty Queto. And if you don't know who Monty Queto is, that is Jeff Cobb under a mask. Before this, I don't know that I've seen Jeff Cobb much. I may have seen him a few times, but this was his real breakout performance, his breakout time. From what he did here, and then people knowing that it was Jeff Cobb under there, he would go on to be what he is today, which is a major star in any company he wrestles in. I remember seeing him here, and I may have seen him before Lucha Underground, but I don't really remember seeing him before Lucha Underground. And I remember him being the guy that was like, wow, who is this character? Who is Monty Queto? I knew it was a character made for the show, but I didn't know the wrestler behind it, and that was what was really cool about seeing him here. He really used this platform and became a big star. Right now, he's a major star in wrestling. He's a big cog in New Japan Pro Wrestling. When he comes to AEW, he's a big star in AEW. If he was to go to WWE, he'd be a big star there. And it's all built off of what he did here in Lucha Underground, even though that was a masked character and we don't know, the two are not the same. It just speaks volumes for how taking something and running with it, how much it could do for yourself and how much it could do for your stock at other companies even. I love Monty Queto. I love Jeff Cobb. I think it's amazing, and I love what he did here in Lucha Underground. Now, number 2, Prince Puma, a.k.a. Ricochet. I mean, this was thinly veiled for people that watched Ricochet for years. You could see his tattoos. I mean, it was obvious who it was under the mask. However, Prince Puma was was positioned in Lucha Underground as being the ultimate babyface, basically the John Cena of Lucha Underground, and he definitely carried his part. Say what you will about Ricochet, and he has some detractors, but Ricochet is, much like I said with Phoenix, right there at that top notch of high flyers who could also wrestle and also do a great match-style match. He's a guy that's being criminally underused in WWE. I think he could be so much more than what they're doing with him. And he's just an amazing talent. I like Ricochet a lot. I loved him in this character. I loved him in this role. Hence why he's on the list. Now, before we get into our number one, we do a little thing here called the best of the rest. Basically, characters that didn't make the list but were considered for it. First up, Tejano Jr. Tejano Jr. was one of the guys that I was most excited to see in Lucha Underground, because a little bit of AAA that I got to see and the little bit I seen when he would come into America, he was a character I really enjoyed. And I really thought at one point, especially during the Lucha Underground run, that he was one of the top 4 or 5 wrestlers in the world. He was used sparingly in Lucha Underground, not as much as some of the other people on the list, but when he was used, he looked amazing. And he was everything I thought he was going to be, because I had seen him before, and I always thought I'd like to see him in a more prominent role, which is what we got with Lucha Underground. He kind of has gone back, and I haven't seen much of him since Lucha Underground, but heck, he was an amazing part of the show. Next up, King Cuerno, another wrestler that I thought was amazing, that blew people away. I mean, to me, he was another character that was creative for the show, made the show look good, brought fans in. If you had no clue what lucha wrestling was, or lucha libre, or even wrestling, and you've seen this guy wrestle, you go, oh wow, that guy's something different. That's something that I haven't seen before. And he made you stop and watch what he did. And I'm sure he brought 1,000 new friends or millions of new fans in there. He was just really great, and he was a fun part of the show. Last but not least, on the best of the rest, the person that probably brought the most eyes to Lucha Underground and the most star power to Lucha Underground, Rey Mysterio Jr. If you say Lucha Libre to Americans, there's the first name that comes up on their minds is Rey Mysterio Jr. Used to be El Santo, used to be Blue Demon, used to be Mil Mascaras, but today, if you ask anybody that's watched wrestling in the last 30 years in America to name one luchador, they're going to bring up Rey Mysterio Jr. His name is synonymous with Lucha Libre, even though, for the most part of the last 25 years, he's either wrestled in WCW or WWE. Him being there and being as big of a star as he is led so much credibility to the promotion. It made it so interesting. And he probably would be a lot higher on the list, but I don't really think they ever used him as one of the main talents on the show. And that's sad, because he is Rey Mysterio. He's a guy that brought fans to he still brings fans to watch the show. There are people that tune in Monday night for the first time and they see Rey Mysterio and that's their guy. That's the person that they become a fan of. His contributions to professional wrestling are so numerous that I could spend the next 2 hours naming off everything Rey Mysterio's done, and I still wouldn't even scratch the tip of what he's been able to accomplish in pro wrestling. Now, with all that, before we get into our number one, if you think I left somebody off the list, put someone too low, someone too high, let me know down in the comments. Going from that, our number one Lucha Underground wrestler, well, I guess it would be a Lucha Libre wrestler, Pentagon Jr. Much like I said with Jeff Cobb, much like I said with Phoenix, his brother, and some other wrestlers, there is no one whose stock went higher from being on this show than Pentagon Jr. Yes, he was somebody I knew already, somebody I'd already seen and knew about. However, he was able to take that and his storyline with Vampiro, his storyline where he's breaking arms. To me, Pentagon Jr. is the star of Lucha Underground. He's the guy that made you watch that show. If you tuned in, you were tuning in to watch what he did. And he is so good at what he does. He's another guy, much like I said with Brian Cage, although he's been booked more prominently, I definitely think he could be in the mix for AEW World Champion. Phoenix too. I think Phoenix could be in the mix for AEW World Championship. I don't know if they don't look at him because I don't believe he speaks English very well, if that's a detractor and that's why he's not been pushed to that level. but he absolutely should be. He has such a magnetism and such a connection with the fans that it doesn't matter if you can't speak the language he's speaking. He speaks the universal language of wrestling, and wrestling fans love the guy. He is amazing. I love Pentagon Jr. He is in my top 10 right now. I think he's one of the best wrestlers. I would love to see him get a chance to become AEW World Champion at some point, because I think he absolutely could carry it, and I think he'd absolutely be one of the best world champions they've had. With all that being said, that is my opinion of the top 10 wrestlers in Lucha Underground. Again, if you think I put someone too high, someone too low, left someone off the list, let me know in the comments. Smash the like button, share, subscribe if you haven't, and if you made it all the way to the end, let's put Zero Miedo in the comments. Zero Miedo for Pentagon Jr. or Zero Fear if you don't know how to spell it, because he's awesome. I love Pentagon. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.